Here's what happened, guys. There are talks that social media as we know it is coming to an end. And this is related to yesterday's verdict that came out from a jury that awarded a total of $6 million for damages that were done by social media platforms, YouTube, and that's owned by Google, and then Meta, to a 20-year-old. And these were damages in the form of mental health issues to addictive behaviors that started all the way at the age of 6 for her. And we have to unpack not just the message this sends to business owners moving forward into the future, but then the bigger conversation we have to have is what do we want our society here in America to be moving forward into the future when it comes to related to accountability and being able to make sure that we're doing what is right over what is easy and convenient. So welcome back to the show. Let's get into it for this Thursday. I do want to talk about what happened yesterday. And again, it's being dubbed the landmark social media verdict. And then what it could do is open up more lawsuits to come for these big tech companies. And then I want to get into a previous lawsuit previous case that was taken up from that was taken up by Texas against these social media platforms and specifically Meta. And talk about where things don't make sense and where we got to get curious and ask questions. But the message this sends to start with is that if you know in your gut as a business owner that you are doing something that feels immoral for a business practice, or you know that you are preying on the vices of the people that are buying your services or products, and you know that that is just wrong, but you continue to do it because it's easy and it's convenient and it's improving your life and the life of your family, this is a moment to look in the mirror and realize what changes do I need to make here? Because your business reputation is not worth damaging your soul. Doing what is right over what is easy and convenient is important for protecting your soul. And for me, I didn't realize the impact that this had until I came back to my faith in Christianity and realized that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and understand the importance of protecting my soul, and that this is not the only life that we have. Our soul is eternal, and we have to make sure that we are doing what is right over what is easy and convenient. And this constant messaging of going the easy and convenient route, or doing business practices and not making these practices aware to the people that you're serving, and almost making it seem like the people that you are serving through products and services are sheep rather than human beings. And we got to get away from that. We got to push back on that with this movement, because this movement is making America's future a small business renaissance. And I believe America's future leaders are small business owners. And this is where we got to lead by example moving forward into the future. And so that is the message that this gets sent, right? If you know in your gut something is off, make the change. Yes, it's going to be a little bit more effort, or maybe even a lot more effort, but in the long term, it's going to continue to build massive trust. And you can even communicate that to the people that you're serving through your products and services, what's going on, and bring them into the process. Transparency is really big right now in the general public, to genuine care. And again, that's the goal of this movement, is to bring together small business owners that genuinely care about the people that they're serving through their products and services. And in the long term, I know that always wins in the long term. Yes, in the short term, it's going to be a little bit more effort and a little bit more challenging, but in the long term, that's where this trust gets built, and the faith in the business gets built, for faith in the products and services that you're giving to either your customers and clients, or the people that you're serving. And then that's where this is where they can continue to recommend your business. There's opportunities for the possibility of that happening on a much bigger scale. And we got to be aware of that as business owners, because in the day-to-day operations, it can get overwhelming, and it can be easy to go the easy and convenient route over what is right. And we got to continue to be reminded of the importance of that, and to hold on to our moral values as we move forward as business owners. Now let's get into the bigger conversation here. Okay. Accountability, right? So there's a few issues that are coming up here. One is the First Amendment rights, the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech. And let me get that up for you so you can see this here. And it was, so I really like Star Wars, but to know all the titles of the original, two trilogies of Star Wars, and not being able to know my individual rights for when it comes to the amendments of the Constitution, that is a problem. And I know I'm not the only American where I had to take really a conscious time to go through these amendments. I continuously need to be reminded of them. And it's important as Americans that we're reminded of our rights as citizens here, to be informed citizens. So here we go for the First Amendment so that I can have this, so I can show this to you. So it says here, freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. So the freedom of speech, that part right there. There's a challenge here with these social media platforms because it seems like they are a utility to be able to share our voice with others. And that is, there's benefits to social media platforms, and then there can be disastrous effects that this could have. I think about the amount of time I spend on the screen and the difference I feel when I'm actually getting outside more, having more conversations in person. But without Instagram, I would not have met my current girlfriend. That would not have been a possibility. She was based in California. I was based on the East Coast. It never would have happened. And that would have been a shame if I had never been able to meet her. And so there are benefits there. Also, when it comes to growing your business on these social media platforms, there's so many stories where local businesses are able to thrive because of social media and being able to get their services and products out there to the community at large. And so now it goes back to what can happen if then these social media platforms are held liable for what gets posted on their platforms through users. And they are protected through Section 230. If you're not familiar with that, you can look it up for that law, for the U.S. law of Section 230, where they are not held liable. But this specific case was related to the features. And so the features were through the auto scroll as one example that could create potentially addictive behavior. And what we also know through COVID and the Twitter files is that there's government interference with these big tech platforms. That happens where there was a focus to moderate content related to COVID-19. And that gets into then moderation, then censorship, and then it goes against our freedom of speech and the suppression of our speech. And this is where we can go down a really really scary slope, really slippery slope in that direction. And it's important to acknowledge that. And it's not crazy to say that either. Okay. And so what we have to get into is how to make sure that we're coming at this of understanding where does the main responsibility and accountability need to be held. As small business owners, and you may be a parent as well, we got to continue to preserve the nuclear family here in this country. There has been an attack on the nuclear family, and we need to make sure that we as American citizens are taking care of each other, and as especially you as parents. If you're a parent, I hope to be a future parent, but you as parents being able to take on that responsibility of raising your child and not giving that to the government. And this is where we have to remind ourselves that the government is there to support us, the American citizens, not the other way around. And we can look back at history at examples where this can go down a really, again, difficult and scary path, going from capitalistic society all the way into socialism, thinking back to Soviet Union, to even China, when it then got into communism, and the potential then in the future of mass surveillance. And we have to realize that we are at a pivotal point in history, the fourth turning, where massive changes are happening. And so we got to decide now as small business owners and unite on shaping that future, because small businesses have a big voice in not only your communities, but overall in our country. And it can be easy to forget that. And so we got to shape that future and not just adapt to the future. And this is where, if it's being able to make sure that we are holding firm in moral values as we're doing business, but also as we're living our life and leading by example for our community. And that goes back to the accountability and taking personal ownership and not being able, as an example, it's like, well, where did she get her iPod Touch? It was from her grandma. And then her iPhone at age 9 was her mom. And so as parents, that's the other question that comes up is, okay, where is the responsibility where do we need to make sure we're putting the main responsibility and accountability? And then what can we do to continue to make sure moving forward that we're preserving the nuclear family? Because there was, in the case, also talks of family issues that are coming up. And this goes back to when it comes to just something you may not even realize is that anyone under the age of 18 cannot sign a contract. Okay, so this is where being able to continue to share important advice and guidance for parents to move forward with how to make sure that their kids are using social media responsibly, or even as I grew up, I didn't get a phone until I was 16 when I was able to drive. But that, I think about it from my view, that should be on the parent for the responsibility and accountability, not on the government to then become the parent. But what we're seeing are signs that the government may be trying to move forward and take on that accountability, that responsibility, in the form of Florida banning social media for any kids under the age of 14, and so then they aren't able to have access to certain information. And there are evil forces online as well. We can look towards the Epstein class. And these pedophiles that are out there. And I go back to this movement is about the people versus the Epstein class. And so there's evil forces like that. But that goes back to then who's mainly responsible and must have that self accountability. Well, that goes back to the parent. And it is a lot of effort. It is a big task to take on. And that's where we got to figure out other ways to support the nuclear family moving forward as a society. Because then we get into, well, how do you determine if someone is under the age of 14? What information needs to be given? If that is driver's licenses, to passports, to biometrics, then we continue to go down that path of mass surveillance, going back to Orwell's 1984, if you've ever read that book. If not, I highly recommend at least getting a synopsis of what that book is, because as Americans, we've got to be informed as to what is going on here. And the bigger moves that are being made for the long term. And it's not crazy because there are signs that point to this. And we can just go back to incentives. And so one of those is I could have created a whole compilation from politicians saying how corrupt the government is, from a federal level, state down to local, like that there is corruption that is out there and that they're coming in to drain the swamp or to clear it out. So we have to be on guard as American citizens, and then specifically America's future leaders, small business owners, have to be on guard and lead by example and say, we're not going to take this anymore and we're going to be informed. We're not just going to listen to what you're saying and take it as face value. We're going to ask questions. We're going to get curious where things don't make any sense. And here's an example I want to share with you of things that don't make sense. And this is where we get into our problems getting created without any guardrails at the beginning to avoid any bigger problems in the future, in order for us to have to let go of our freedoms and our individual rights, because this is something we must preserve as our individual rights, such as our freedom of speech and our ability to own our small business. So let me share with you, this was another case that happened. So I'm going to get it up here. So this was between the state of Texas and then Meta. And this also can show you what's going on in the future with other lawsuits, other states trying to sue to get money. But with Texas, what happened was it was a $1.4 billion settlement. And you can see here, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton sued Meta in 2022, alleging the company through Facebook violated Texas's Capture or Use of Biometric Identifier Act and the Deceptive Trade Practices Act. The core claim was that Meta used facial recognition technology to capture and analyze facial geometric biometric data from photos and videos of a million Texans, including some non-users, without their required consent. Okay, So that's a lot of money right there. $1.4 billion settlement. Now, the question that would come up that would make sense is, okay, there were people that were affected by this, the photos and videos of millions of Texans. So wouldn't this money go towards them and the damages that they had to deal with? You'd think so. That'd be the common sense. But no, it's not the case, because later on, right here, the $1.4 billion settlement is one of the largest privacy settlements ever attained by a single state. So we're talking about individual privacy. Meta agreed to pay the state of Texas the full amount spread over 5 years. In return, the case was resolved without trial. So here's where the money goes. The money goes, and then you can look this up. There's other articles about this. I got Gronk here to help me out with this. But where the money goes is the funds are paid directly to the state of Texas. This is a state enforcement action brought by the Attorney General on behalf of the public and the state's interests. So typical uses for such settlements include funding state consumer protection, privacy enforcement, or data security initiatives. But again, we're going to go down here, there's no provision for direct distribution or checks on it to individual residents who may have had their biometric data captured. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. It just seems like the state is getting money from these companies, but then it's not being distributed to the individuals that were directly affected. And now we get into the question of, well, is this, where does that lead moving forward in the future? What does that mean? We gotta get curious. We got to ask questions. Now it goes back to what all these politicians are saying, that our government is corrupt. Well, where's that money going to go? Is it going to actually go to what they're saying the money's going to go to? Well, we've noticed plenty of examples in states, and I've covered it here on the show. Minnesota is one, California is another one, of how this money, how there's so much fraud relating to our taxpayer money. And that's another question that we got to continue to talk about, is like, does it make sense to be paying so much in taxes? But then wouldn't this make sense to go directly to the residents in Texas that were affected? I would say yes. So why isn't that happening? And that's the conversation we got to be having here. And that is something we have to continue to put pressure on in getting answers. Because what does this mean moving into the future? And as American citizens, what are we moving towards for our society in the future? And this is where we go back to the importance of accountability. Who has the main accountability and responsibility here? The individual, or then are we giving that up to the government? And then with these utility platforms, is what you can think about them as, are we also making sure we're protecting our freedom of speech on those platforms and not going into the moderation, censorship, because we have a right to be able to share our views, our opinions, to share what we think, to also seek out the truth and communicate the truth, even if it goes against the interests of other people or the powerful, because I go back to this worldview of the powerful and the rest of us. That is something we must preserve in this country. We must fight for what is beautiful, good, and true in this country. And as small business owners, not only are we going through the day-to-day operations of our business and running our businesses, but we also got to make sure that we are leading by example in this area as well. We have to move forward in the future. And we got to continue to wake up the rest of the nation as well. And is that fair as taking on that role? No, that's not fair. Does it come with great responsibility? Absolutely. It does. But someone has got to do it. Someone has got to clean up the mess that we're experiencing right now in this country. And when I look at small business owners, and I look at how small businesses, when they're thriving, the quality of life of our communities improves. This is where we can create, this is where the incentives make sense. And to continue to make sure that we are doing what is right over what is easy and convenient for the long term. Short term, it would be difficult to justify that for incentives for some people, but in the long term, always it's justified. And then when it comes to your soul, it's always justified to protect your soul. And we cannot forget that. We must be constantly reminded of that. So if you, as a small business owner, love this country as I love this country, and you care about this country, and I would hope both, is you love this country and you care about this country, care about this country's future, and you want to connect with other small business owners who care about this country in person, they can join us for A Future Fest. This is where you can register at afuturefest.com in Charleston, South Carolina. It's happening January 14th to 15th, 2027. Expected to have over 300 small business owners from across industries and across our country come together to shape the future and to focus on not just when it comes to our moral values, discipline and accountability, but also health, clarity within our industries, understanding our industries, connection as well, and then ownership, taking up ownership for our actions moving forward. So excited for that event, and then I will see you guys tomorrow.